Let's be reasonable.
Yeah.
If you see something on the Pilates reformer, for sure, wipe it up.
Now, do I want my kid to be uncomfortable and itchy? No. But like, would I rather him sometimes run into that and also be able to live like a fun kid, normal life? Yes. I would argue that that's really not much different than going to the playground.
So true. Like, why are we hyperfixating on this one place and being like, ooh, this is dangerous. Wouldn't it be nice if we could?
Right.
And it's like, well, if that's what you're worried about, then it's everything. And hi.
Hello.
And welcome to EpiPod. Sarah is a mom to 2 little boys with food allergies.
And Danielle has navigated life-threatening allergies her entire life.
Living with an invisible health condition is so isolating.
The fear and the anxiety.
Trying to cover it up so you don't affect anybody else.
Especially your kids. Sound familiar?
Join us on the couch and take a load off with people who just get it.
We're so glad you're here. Welcome back to EpiPod.
Presented by Lorissa's Kitchen.
Today we are talking about playgrounds and play places with allergies, which is always like such a hot topic. I feel like it's something that people ask us about and me on my Instagram page all the time. Like, how do I even go to the freaking playground?
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit. Like, it's been in stories, we've alluded to it, but like the actual brass tacks of best practices that you have found that work for your family best, and also things that with research and looking things up, like what are things that you actually need to worry about, and what are things that just the chances would be so low, like you need to let it go so you can focus on the things that matter.
Yeah. And I feel like that is a lot of it. However, like, as we always say, allergies are so nuanced and like every person is so different. So and even every age is different, right? So like when we were little, jumping right into it, when Graham was little, I guess I was a littler too, but he did react differently to his allergens than he does now for a variety of factors, right? I mean, there's a lot of evidence that shows that most people grow out of certain allergies by the time they're 8 or 9, or even like some groupings, I think, grow out of allergies at like age 4 or 5. So like there's different stages where research has shown that like our allergies change, like our bodies adjust, our immune systems are different, and we may or may not be more or less allergic to something. And then of course other factors like treatment, which we're in, change my son's immune system so that he can tolerate more things. So I mean, again, all of this whole episode prefaced by like, talk to your doctor, understand and know your kid and what the limits are, but happy to go through like what we've found, things we've run into, and kind of what has worked for me mentally. Oh, and did we not address the dog in the room?
I know, I was going to say, we haven't addressed the elephant in the room. A literal baby dog.
Yes. Hi, Gatsby.
This is Gatsby. Oh. This is my angel.
If you are just listening and not watching, Danielle has the sweetest little white, well-groomed terrier dog.
Thank you. He's a West Highland White Terrier. His family is grand champions. Both his brother and his sister had their championship. He turned 3 the day before yesterday. Aww. And this is the first time that... Thank you. This is the first time that EpiPod is seeing me in my true dog mom glory. If you follow me on social media, you know that my world revolves around this little 17 pounds of fluff. But I am having a rat infestation in the place that I just moved in, and it's totally safe. It's just in the attic. There's like confirmed by a professional. They have never been in our space.
Yeah.
Etc. But I just met with the pest control person for 3 hours. We actually talked about nuts a lot. Yeah. We can save that for a different time, although I think that's a little too niche even for us. But I was just so freaked out that I was like, you're coming with me, bub. So yeah, this is Gatsby, everyone.
Hi, Gatsby. I've met Gatsby before once or twice, but he is so well behaved, which is why at the beginning of this episode, I didn't even address, because I was just looking at you and he's like quiet and angel dog sitting there. So I'm like, oh.
The thing about Gatsby is he was raised as a little boy, not as a little dog. And so he's really good at people activities. He's good to go shop. He loves to go shopping. He loves wineries. He loves wine bars, wine in general.
So he is his mom.
Yes. He is travels on the leash. That's a true stereotype. But he doesn't do dog things. He doesn't go on walks for more than a block. He doesn't like dog parks. He doesn't like other dogs usually. So yeah, you're seeing the non-goblin side. Anyways, I can imagine if I were a mom, whether like, I don't know, of really little or a school age child, I can't even imagine, just as being an allergy person myself, like everything I touch, every time we walk in this podcasting studio, I go and I wash my hands, because one time in this studio, there was a big charcuterie with a bunch of different kinds of nuts on the table in here.
And this was like a year ago.
Oh, it was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
No, it was a year ago. Yeah. So, but I remember that. And I know like a lot of people bring their lunch in here. So I'm always just like, why? We touched a surface. A lot of people eating food from all these takeout places. Like I always wash my hands. It's just like an automatic in here. But like, I can't imagine if I were a little kid. If you like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like Honey, I turned her into a third grader again. I can't even imagine like going out to a playground to recess thinking like, oh my gosh, like what did the older group of kids have before lunch or snack before they came out on the playground? Like, those things were never on my radar. I never once, as a highly reactive and a skin reactive person, I never once had a reaction from anything on any sort of play, whatever, like over at people's houses, at school, all the different schools I went to, even in high school when we would we grew up like kind of in the middle of nowhere, Texas, like going to the park or the movies is like kind of all you have. But I never had any kind of reaction, like picnic tables. So that's always something that I remember, but I can only imagine now being more conscious and more aware and going through more things allergy wise, where it's on my radar, just like how easy it would be to overthink.
Yeah.
And like little kids constantly like need to get their energy out, and they're constantly in different parks, different friends' houses, different everything.
Yeah, it's true. I think, like when you have these little tiny humans that you're in charge of taking care of and making sure that they like are healthy and well, it's easy to go to a place of like, let's bubble wrap or like do whatever we need to do to keep them safe. I think, one thing for me whenever I think through these things though, is always like safe has a lot of different meanings. It's not just that your body is unharmed. It also means that like mentally they are well and stable and that they are not living their life afraid. And so I think that it's my job as their, parent to ensure that they don't have this like overwhelming amount of anxiety. Of course, they'll find their own avenues to stress on and be anxious about as they grow up. But as kids, I really want them to be kids. And so I try to balance my fears and anxieties and honest concerns. I mean, if somebody goes to the playground and is eating, an ice cream bar and it's dripping all over the slide, and then my kid slides down the slide and then touches their skin, or, it touches their skin, or they touch it with their hands and then they put their hands in their mouth, which still, Graham like bites his nails. He's 6 years old. And so he's constantly putting his hands in his mouth, which means that like allergens can certainly transfer, especially if they're, a big blob of ice cream or, a bag of peanuts, something like that. So, I think they're valid concerns. One tip straight out the gate that I do is I try to remember that generally if the allergen is not visibly seen, meaning it's like if there's something there, it's trace amounts of the protein. I try not to over worry about that, because I know that research shows that like the amount of people who react on contact or even transfer hands to mouth from those trace particles are very slim. I can't quote the exact numbers, but things like peanut or milk, a lot of times it's like a half of a teaspoon or a a teaspoon of milk before anybody reacts, or like the threshold where most people react. Not anybody, but most. And same with peanuts. It's like a half of a peanut is where most people react. Whereas anything less than that generally isn't going to cause a major reaction. Again, I don't know the exact numbers. I'm just saying I try to rely on that and then realize that when I get to a park or a play place or wherever, I go and take a loop around, a little walk before my kids or with my kids as they're running to the playground to ensure that there's not a big glob of something, that there's not, allergens just readily there on the play set where they can dip their hands in or really be covered in their allergen. And if there is, I have to make a decision. Okay, are we going to continue to be here, or can I wipe it up and we feel better about it? But really those like microscopic trace amounts of an allergen, I try not to overstress about those.
It's interesting when you say that about like half a peanut thing. I know that I myself have reacted to way less, like when it's ingested or whatever. So I'm like, what study is that? Let me read that. Or like, I know that I am like, I broke the blood test scale. Like I was like way on the outsides of being an outlier.
Yeah.
So that's just really interesting. And we've talked about this before, but can you remind people, I can just hear people asking in their cars out loud, like, where do you find research? And like, how do you know when you are like, okay, I know that Sarah, need to see what research says about this. Like, what does science say?
Yeah.
Other than talking to your allergist, where would you look for that? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a few like go-to journals and like colleges, like the College of Allergy and Immunology, where they publish research that they've done or their kind of physicians and researchers have done, or there are allergists out there that are really well known who are doing or hosting podcasts or on social media and sharing links to a lot of different studies that they use in their own offices with their patients. So yeah, if your relationship with your allergist isn't one where you feel like you can just like ask them these really specific questions, I think starting there, like finding somebody that is really well respected and known online could help. And of course, verify and review that like they're legitimate, but also fair.com, some of these like allergy organizations, they'll often post articles or share things on social media about this. But I can link some of those too. I can try to find them. And again, I definitely will, because definitely don't quote me on the amounts, but you're right. I mean, Graham has reacted as well to less than that amount, right? And so, but again, with all things allergy, it's so gray. They, what you'd react to one day is not what you'd react to the next, right? Like, yeah, maybe you reacted to, trace amounts of something that time that you had your reaction, but like, who knows? There could have been, Danielle, other times in your life when you were exposed to far more than that unknowingly and didn't react.
No, Sarah, it's so funny that you point that out, because I was thinking about it when we talked about Halloween.
Yeah.
I vividly remember, and I was thinking about this on the drive home, about Cracker Jacks and how that was like something that was like the cardboard boxes of Cracker Jacks was given out at like the fall festivals at church and with our school. And I remember knowing like, I knew I couldn't eat Cracker Jacks the way my parents would just like toss it back, and it's like popcorn, caramel, and peanuts.
Yeah.
But I guess it was peanuts, like in my mouth, suck off the caramel and take it out.
Yeah.
Which like, I was really little, but I was thinking about that. Whereas like now I see Cracker Jacks next to the chips I want to buy at the grocery store, and I'm like, lost my appetite. I'll get a different kind of chip.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's safe, I'm just like, meh, gross.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Yeah, that's so true.
I think, yeah, your body changes, your mind changes, and also just dependent on those other like kind of cofactors. Like, are you getting sick? Is something going on with your immune system? Have you been around a dog and you're also allergic to dogs? Like, there's all these little things that can play into whether or not you have a reaction. So while that's extremely scary, I think, looking at the majority or like a research study that really does kind of show the risk level for most people, and then using your experience. So like if you've never done a playground, that's one thing. But if you've been to playgrounds before and all has been fine with a basic, like, look around and see if there's peanuts dropped on the floor, or whatever else, then like I would argue then same would go for like indoor play places or wherever else. Like or take it back even further. Like if you've gone out in public at all with your child and they've touched surfaces or been around other kids, if they've been in daycare, like I would argue that that's really not much different than going to the playground.
So true. Like, why are we hyperfixating on this one place and being like, ooh, this is dangerous. Wouldn't it be nice if we could?
Right.
And it's like, well, if that's what you're worried about, then it's everything. And you know that you're not doing everything.
Right.
So yeah,
exactly.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Our minds really can like latch on to something and like label it as like a no zone. And it's like, well, actually the whole world can't be a no zone, and it's certainly not already. So
yep. Yeah.
Take that no zone off of that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, again, everyone's different. There are some people who, of course, like every little thing they react to, like there's certain conditions and people who have trouble leaving their house. Totally. And that's a valid, real thing. But like for the majority of people, it's what we're talking about.
Right.
So a few other things. So I get to a playground, I take like a little glancey around and see like, okay, what's here? If there's anything like wrappers or whatnot, like I'll pick it up, I'll throw it away. I'll maybe, especially as they've gotten older, kind of mentioned like, if you see anything, don't pick it up. Like we don't know what that is. I mean, Ethan, the other day,
the biggest riot, Sarah.
Oh my God.
Like he is the ultimate
He's something
character.
Yeah. So the other day we were at Graham's soccer practice and there's like, it's fields, and he came over. Well, first of all, he came over. Did I share this already? He came over with a cell phone.
What?
And I'm like, buddy,
where'd you get that?
Where'd you get that? And he was like, over there. Like it was like across the field. And I was like, bud, you can't just take people's cell phones. Like we had to go find out who it was. Well, then he was playing, and don't worry, I'm watching my child, but it's like a safe zone, right? There's like people all around.
Everyone's
like there's
running around the field.
Kids on our team, like bigger brothers are with him. And like, it's like, we all have visual, but we're just not like standing next to him, Yeah. And then he comes over like a couple minutes after that, and he's got a big wad of something in his mouth that he's like chewing on. And I'm like, what is that? I'm like, opening his mouth, like ripping it out. It's like a rainbow chewy candy. And I'm like, no wrapper in sight, like nothing. And I'm like, buddy, where'd you get that? He's like, it was in the ground. Like it could have been like marijuana gummies. You know what I mean? Like allergies aside, it literally could have been anything.
Oh my God.
And he just put it in his mouth. And so like some kids would never do that. Ethan does that.
Okay, Sarah, having a little boy sounds a lot like having a puppy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm constantly doing the fish hook sweep in this dog's mouth.
Yes.
And it sounds like it's a similar experience.
Yes. Ethan is something else. So I don't think Graham would ever do that.
Right.
But like even when he was little, really.
Oh, I know I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I was like, had 2 words in my vocabulary and one of them was sticky. Yeah. And I wouldn't put anything in my mouth, much less touch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ethan is like our wild card in that way. And so we have to like remind him a lot. Buddy, like we don't know. It could be dangerous. It could have your allergen. It could, be really dirty. Like we don't need to touch or put anything in our mouth. So that's a conversation that we have with them. So checking the playground, having those conversations. Obviously after we leave the playground, we would always wipe hands and before any kind of like eating or just doing other activities. Something else we've run into, and I think we talked about it on one of the podcasts, where sometimes people will eat on the playground. So
I know I did growing up.
Yeah. Like and I mean, my sister, she has 2 little boys, and honestly, before Graham came along with the allergies, like she's even told me, she's like, Sarah, I never would have thought
that was
that was the thing. Like if my kid's like playing on the playground, he's like, Mommy, I'm hungry. I want a snack. And she'd be like, okay, here's the peanut butter cracker. Like she would never have thought twice about that.
Totally.
Just like, okay, go play. Like, cause you know, at the playground, you're like, as a mom, you're like, you just want to break. I know there's all sorts of parents that are like, how dare you ever let your kid like out of your sight, or you look at your phone while your kid's on the playground. What if they're snatched by a burglar, whatever. Like I know, but like also parents need a freaking break.
Also, I can only imagine like if a parent, like if a mom from the 60s could like come back, like time travel, they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Like we would just open the door and be like, come back for dinner.
Yes, totally. Even young kids. So you just kind of
how it's changed.
It's changed a lot. And I mean, I get it. Like being distracted by technology, like none of that is good. You want to have focus on your kids, especially your allergy kids, to make sure they're not putting stuff in their mouth. But like there's only so much you can do.
Totally.
Like parents need a second. So I get why parents would just be like, yeah, here, go ahead, go eat, you know? You only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know, you know? And so I think in situations where somebody is eating on the playground, what I've done in the past is I've kindly like asked the child if they're old enough. Now, if they're like a 2-year-old, that's different. But like if it's like a 6-year-old or something, I'll be like, hey buddy, do you actually mind going to eat over there? Like my son is allergic to that. It can kind of be dangerous for him to be near it. If I see their parent, I'll either ask them like within earshot. So like they know I'm like talking to their kid. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not like being like, hello little boy. Like, it's like not like creepy.
But look at you. You look like a fairy princess. Like I'm sure they'd see him like, oh, that mom's so cute engaging with my kid.
Oh, but people don't want you to talk to their kid. Like people are real territorial, which I get in a lot of ways.
Interesting. Whenever I see a kid, I don't know, like I must give fairy princess energy because like they're always like, what's your name? Like, let me touch you. What are you wearing? What's on your ears? Like, I love talking to little kids. I think they're hilarious.
Yeah.
I never thought that there might be parents that are like, no, don't talk to my kids.
Oh, really? Yeah, they're out there for sure. And I mean, I do believe that in a lot of ways we have to be careful about who's talking to our kid, right? But like, anyway, a lot of times I'll either make sure they hear me so they know I'm talking to their kid, or I'll like go to them and be like, hey, is that your mom? You know, like, and go over and say like, hey, do you mind if your kid eats their snack at the table? My son's severely allergic to what they're eating, and just so that they can like all play safely here.
And what's the response to that?
I would say, I mean, I've probably only done that. And here's the caveat to that. I won't do it unless it's like a very obvious allergen for Graham. So like if it is, I don't know, like just a snack bar and I don't know what's in it, like I usually won't do that. Do I really think that everybody should eat at the picnic tables? Absolutely. Do I want to tell everybody to eat at the picnic tables every time I see them eating anything, even if it's an apple pouch? Yes. But I have to like pick my own battles. Mm-hmm. Like for me and just my like energy and like mental abilities to like monitor things. And so yeah, I will do it like if they're just truly snacking on peanuts, or it's like a peanut butter bar, or if it is like an ice cream cone, drippy ice, something like messy, like like a peanut butter sandwich that like it's smearing all over their face, like things like that. I've also offered a wipe before. Like I've also been like, if people are eating something and they're out, like our kids have been playing, I might be like, hey, my son's actually allergic to dairy. Like I know that, you know, they've been eating the Cheetos. Like, do you mind can I offer you this wipe so that they can kind of wipe up so it's safer? So like offering them something.
Does it go over well?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I've probably only done it. I said all that to say like, I probably only actually talked like that to people like 6 or 7 times in our life. Like it's not like it's a rampant problem that I run into.
That's and like literally once a year average.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I would say it's gone well every time but once. Then it's gone really well most of the time.
Good.
Like I would say like 4 or 5 of those times they'd be like, oh my gosh, yes. Oh yes. What can I do? Like, what do we need to do? Yes, Sally, come over here, sit down, and like, it's all like, they get it. They learned something. They're actually like, thank you for telling me. I would say then there's like 1 or 2 in the percentage that's like, okay, fine, and they just kind of like, they're doing it to appease you, but they're like annoyed that you asked.
Good night to them. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And then there's also, then there's also like the one that was just nasty.
I remember.
And we talked about it, so I won't go into it like on a different podcast.
It was like a grandma.
Yeah. And she was just like, how dare you? How dare you tell me what to do with my kid? And I'm like, first of all, I didn't tell you. I asked you politely. Second of all, this is for like the safety and well-being of my child. And if the roles were reversed, like if something my kid was doing was threatening your child's life, I feel like you might feel differently about this.
Totally. I just like simply cannot even begin to try and understand where people's like disposition can come from when it comes to that.
It's people wanting like their individual liberty. Like that's their big thing. It's like, well, you shouldn't inconvenience me. Like, I'm sorry you have the allergy, but like, this is my life and you shouldn't change like what I do.
Literally die on a different hill, not on this one. Like grow up. Oh my gosh. I can't even. Well, I'm glad that it's like majority gone really well. And that's really good tips. And I especially love that it's so rare that you even have to do that. It's not like, I mean, to me, who's never face that or like who runs on the anxious side. Yeah. Like say it's not even like my kid, say it's me and I'm going to be in a place where I'm going to be touching a lot of equipment. I would have the tendency as just with my anxiety to be like, I'm going to have to do this every time. It feels like an airplane ride. Like we got to wipe it down. We have it's everything. Yeah. And that's too overwhelming. Then I don't want to go to the playground. I mean, the adult version is a gym.
Yeah.
And I remember like post-pandemic, like the first time I went back to like a Pilates class being like, oh, this is so interesting. Like I never once of all my years of being obsessed with different types of workouts, I never once have had any kind of contact reaction. I've had bazillions of different instructors and bazillions of different types of exercises do the corrections, like especially yoga where they're like trying to crack your back.
Yeah, yeah.
I have this one yoga instructor, love him, where he would literally, it was like his goal to like crack my like every single like vertebrae.
I don't know that I've had a yoga teacher tell me to crack my back or myself. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, it was hilarious. He was like, all right, deep breath. He was like part chiropractor. But anyways, like it was never even a thought.
Right.
So now that I am having those thoughts, I just have to be like, listen, if you see, like, let's be reasonable. Yeah. If you see something on the Pilates reformer, for sure, wipe it up. But like, the truth is these things are wiped down all the time before and after the classes.
Yep.
You've never, history says you've never had a problem.
Yeah.
Like, here's some advice to myself. Go die on a different hill.
Yeah.
Go die on a different hill, not this one. Like, enjoy your stinking class. And if history proves you wrong, then you can pivot and you have full trust in yourself and you have the medications and you also know that a contact reaction is not going to threaten your life.
Right.
So like, I know because I'm not a 6-year-old or I'm not an Ethan, like I'm not going to lick the Pilates reformer.
Right.
So that's always something
like
for the adults listening to remember.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too, you made me think of like, cause you're inside a studio for Pilates. I will try to find the study and link it, but I know I've read something too that says that allergens, like proteins, last like less time, like they don't last as long outside, like on a hard surface, like in the sun, you know, as they would inside, like on a fabric or a counter, you know, like something like that. I don't know the science. Yeah, I don't know the science behind it. But that always does make me feel a little bit better. I mean, similar to germs, right? Like germs outside don't like, they're not as likely to like make you sick, to like infect you because they're like out in the air and like on surfaces. I remember COVID times, speaking of, like they would say like a metal railing is in like outside is far less likely than like if you're inside with someone talking to them.
Okay. Can I ask you, like, I'm sure someone out there listening is a newer allergy mom. They have a little, maybe they've had a similar experience that was really scary. Like when Graham breathed in the pancake mix and it was, they're in their car thinking, okay, but like my kid reacted to something in the air that was so microscopic, and I am afraid to go to a playground play place. Like I haven't, like that is my no zone. Yeah. What sort of tactical advice, or like when you were in their shoes, what are baby steps to get them to eventually graduate to more of what we're talking about right now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do know some people who they'll go at like off times, right? Like when there's not as many people there, they'll maybe bring 2 parents. Like if you have that, like if you're not a single parent, making sure that there's like 2 people there just in case something were to happen. Well, I don't know that it's necessarily needed, like according to science, if there's no, full puddle of ice cream or peanuts there, whatever you're dealing with. But I've done it before, brought wipes, like the Well2 wipes. By the way, there's a discount in the show notes if you want some. They're like the peanut wipes if that's your allergen, that remove the protein. But just like a baby wipe, some sort of like sudsy something to wipe down like where your small child is going to be playing specifically. I mean, again, you might get some looks from somebody who's like, oh my God, this germaphobe,
who cares?
Also F them, who cares?
Yes.
But like, also, if you're going kind of by yourself, there's no other people there, you do a little wipe down, like that could be a baby step that is...
I'm gonna counter, because I feel like if I'm that mom, I can see like, okay, fine. If it's a big glob for sure, and your kid wants to use that slide, like for sure, clean it up.
Yeah.
But I can see myself and like my hyper anxiety brain, like doing that once, and now that becomes my best practice. Like it's a safety behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally could. Yeah. I mean,
so I guess like, I love that idea. If you are a Danielle, not a Sarah, like don't let it snowball and don't let it become a safety behavior, because you want to reinforce, like build your confidence that like, okay, we did it in the off time, or like we did it so many times with the 2 of us, they were always okay. Now we're going to do just me and like maybe a little busier of a time. Yeah. Like build up your confidence. Don't riddle it with like all of these steps that aren't necessary per your allergist, and B, like are going to become norms for you that are going to ruin your life. Like all these rituals.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, that's a really good point. What I think you know yourself, and like, or yourself even if you're not like admitting it, right? So
totally.
like take a really like long look in the mirror, and like before you do anything like a safety behavior of wiping down every surface at the playground, like maybe is it a baby step, or is it something you're going to rely on always, and be anxious about? Because
something that I find helpful is like, I'm not sure if I shared this on the podcast, 4th of July. I don't think it did.
Okay.
How I had like, I have a lot of pregnant friends right now, and they just like don't have it in them, especially in the Austin summers. Like they don't want to be on a barge. Like they don't want to get on the wake surf. No. Like they don't want to do that. So we were, and I was just like not feeling it either. So we're like, let's just like sit by the river. Let's go to one of like the state parks. Yeah. Sit by the river. The people who want to get in the river can. The people who don't can just like make picnics. Let's just spend time together. And we did. And I arrived late as always. It's a pecan orchard. Like there were pecan shells everywhere. Yeah. It looked like gravel, but it was pecan. And I was so freaked out, and I was so worried about like getting in and out of the banks of the river. Yeah. I'm not pregnant, and I'm 1,000,000 degrees. Like I sure as heck want to get in that river. Yeah. And I was so worried. Like, am I going to react? Yeah. Like this is so uncomfortable for me. It's just like the air, like the breeze, like it just felt like way too much. And I wanted to turn around and drive back home, but I was like, all right, you already drove 30 minutes to get here. Everybody, like they see you walking over. Yeah. Like, what if we just did 5 minutes? Like I can set down my things and sit on the picnic blanket and just, I'm going to commit to 5 minutes of sitting here, and like the breeze is going by and I'm sitting on pecan territory. But if I can make it 5 minutes, like let's just make it 5 minutes. Yeah. And then you can go home if you want to. Yeah. I stayed for 3.5 hours.
Look at you.
I got in the river. I got out of the river. Some of my things got pecan stuff on there. I wiped it off. Like it was not comfortable. Yeah. It was not a fun day. I wish more than anything that I had said yes to the party barge. Yeah. But like, as somebody who like knew I needed to not solidify to my brain that like, you can't do this, it was like, no, but you do have meds, and like you're kind of in the middle of nowhere, but not really. You have people to help you. And if your doctor were here, he would say, I'm not that worried about things being in the air.
Right.
So
Contact reactions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a long story to say, like, if this feels big for you and you are brand new to this, or you're fresh off of a scary reaction that had nothing to do with the park, but like having your kid run amok in areas where like maybe things won't happen, find a way to replicate that and build your confidence back with a baby step of like, all right, we'll go to the park. Just tell them like, it's a quick stop. I'm going to be there for 10 minutes.
Yep.
And the next time, maybe 15. And the next time, and before you know it, you're back to the hour that you used to go.
Yeah. That's really great advice. Yeah. Just like giving yourself an out, so that it doesn't feel so big and scary.
Yeah. Or like give yourself something that feels accomplishable.
Yeah.
And that you like actually can convince yourself to do, because anybody can do anything for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Although I would argue that it would be harder to rip your kid off of a playground 5 minutes after getting there than even dealing with the allergy things.
Right. Whatever the kid version of my 5 minutes in the pecan orchard was.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll say about this, and we'd love to hear your questions. If we like missed something, please let us know. Send us an email at EpiPodPodcast@gmail.com. That's right. Because we can definitely bring this up in the question and answers later, but I'll say like, just a reminder that Graham, for example, had skin reactions as a baby, for sure, still does sometimes, to where like we either don't know what it's caused from, or a dog licks him, or like, for example, whenever he was little and a grandparent would kiss him on the cheek after having their allergen, like he would get a flare, he would get a hive on his cheek. So like he was really contact reactive and sensitive. And honestly, there were a lot of times we'd leave a park or a play place or wherever, a friend's house that we were playing at, and he did have like little hives, or he would have eczema flare. He would be itchy and uncomfortable. And that's something you have to decide and weigh. And like your doctor said before, like even if you get a contact reaction, most people, again, I'm not saying everybody is different, but most people won't have like anaphylaxis from it. Now, do I want my kid to be uncomfortable and itchy? No. But like, would I rather him sometimes run into that and also be able to live like a fun kid, normal life? Yes. Like I would much rather take some skin irritation that we can treat and deal with, and him live a happy, full life.
I will say my entire childhood, my mom always had wet ones, and she always had Benadryl cream.
Yeah.
And like, I don't even know if she or I were thinking, oh, allergies. We just knew like I got itchy.
Yeah.
And I got little hives sometimes. And like, wipe it down, put on Benadryl cream. Like that was my go-to. I had Benadryl cream in my pencil case, like throughout school.
Yep.
So I really find myself, it's become like a mantra of mine. When Levi was a guest a couple of weeks ago, it plays on repeat in my head. And I'm just so thankful that she shared that. We like put it up as a reel, but talking about like the risk, like taking the risk and living a big, beautiful life is so much more important. Like you're going to hurt yourself more by not being willing to take risks, because you're like trying so badly to avoid things that you end up hurting yourself more than if you had gone prepared and taken calculated risks. Different words, but she said it much more beautifully.
No, that's great.
But like, I really have been hanging on to that. Yeah. Really been hanging on to that. And I think it applies to pretty much every allergy scenario, but certainly this one.
Yep. Agreed.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I hope that was helpful. And please send us questions. Like I said, if we missed anything, if you have a specific question, or even if you have like a crazy story or something to share, like write us either on social or EpiPodPodcast@gmail.com. And we can bring it up in our like future question and answer segments.
I will say, if you email us, we will see any of them. But if you email us, it's a lot easier for us to file away and sort. Instagram is sort of like a laundry dryer.
Yeah.
It's like where did the sock go?
I know.
I know the sock. I know I put 2 socks in here and now there's only 1 sock.
It's so true.
So email us.
Yeah. Speaking of questions and answers, let's do it.
I love it.
This segment is brought to you by Pulse Power, a high-protein, all-natural chickpea-based snack line that is co-founded by an allergy mom. And Danielle, we love these snacks in our house.
They have delicious snack sticks and chickpea spreads that are made in a dedicated top 14 allergen-free facility. A great choice for school lunches and snack boxes. Question 1. This is a sticky situation. My child has food allergies. He is 2 years old and he has had them since he was 4 months old. And my parents have not even tried to learn what his allergies are. Now that he is 2, they have wanted to start keeping him more often, but they don't know how to feed him. How would you handle this? It's very frustrating because his other grandparents have learned his allergies and the things that he can and cannot have. But my dad has no interest in learning, but he gets upset because my child spends a lot more time with the other set of grandparents.
Natural consequences.
What's that TikTok sound that's like, well, if it isn't the consequences of your own actions?
Yeah. I mean, that is true here. I'm sorry you're upset, but you are making your own bed. If you want to spend time with your grandchild, you need to buck up. You need to get over whatever weird pride thing you have about not wanting to believe that allergies exist and learn your grandchild's allergens so that you can keep them safe. Because guess what? If something happens when your grandchild is with you and it's your fault, you will never, ever be forgiven by your child and by yourself. Like, you will never forgive yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think as a parent, if I didn't feel comfortable, I know it's sticky because it's your grandparents or, you know, if this is your dad and your mom that you're talking about who's not understanding or not like wanting to learn the allergy thing. I'm sorry. I mean, my kid is first, you know, like at this point in my life, like, I have a child that I am responsible for, who I love with every fiber of my being. And if you can't or won't learn about their allergens, then like you don't get to care for them. And that's a hard line in the sand, but it's not actually a very hard decision to make. And I know that it is sticky. I know that it is not fun. And I'm so sorry you're dealing with such an asshole, but like, that is where we are. And there would be no wiggle room for me because if you're so obstinate that you are even vocally saying, I won't learn this, or I don't want to, like, I don't know if that's being verbally said or if it's just by his actions, but either way, it's unacceptable. It's one thing if you were like letting your teenage daughter wear mini skirts and your dad was like, the grandpa was like, nope, I am not okay with that, whatever. That is something different, right? It's a preference. It's whatever.
Everybody, yeah.
We're difference of opinions. This is not a difference of opinion.
No, this is his life.
This is a life or death situation for a child who can't speak up for themselves, by the way, doesn't even understand fully their allergens themselves. They need a proper parent or, guardian.
A guardian and an advocate.
And I mean, sorry.
Yeah. I retweet everything you just said. I saw a TikTok last night that I think applies to this. It was not allergy related at all. You may have to cut this, but okay. So it was this girl and she was saying, I have 2 siblings. Like there's 3 sisters in our family. And we all individually have an amazing relationship with our mom. And I get asked all the time by other people in my kids' class, by whatever, like, how come, like, what did your mom do to make you want to have her as a part of your kids' lives and like want to have her a part of your life as an adult? Like all 3 of you guys, like that's so special. Like I have that, but my husband doesn't, or like I'm not as close to my mom or whatever. And she was like when I was like the first time I remember having a good, like a memory or a thought about my mom's parenting is she was 3 years old and she was eating a popsicle, and it was like they were playing outside, like the 3 little girls and the mom, she's the youngest. And so she like couldn't like multitask playing and popsicling like her older sisters. And the mom brought out like a little bowl so that she could like put the popsicle in and drink the juice if it had melted, but like her popsicle was always there. And she was like, my little brain thought like, wow, I have a really good mommy. Like she does that. And she was like, that metaphor has stuck my entire life. It has stuck through my teenage years. It has stuck through my adulthood. It's stuck through the way that she is a parenting through a grandmother's eyes of now my little girls. And I want her around for all of it because I have, as a lot of teenagers have, or as even little kids, or as an adult, like stressed out mom, I have taken the popsicle bowl and bumped the bottom and splashed it all over her. I've thrown it down at her. I have not been thankful for her holding the popsicle bowl, but my entire life she has held the popsicle bowl. And I think that this man is doing the opposite to his kid. Like he's throwing the popsicle juice in her face, which is so sad.
It is.
It is so passive aggressive. And if you want to be a part of your child's life as they are navigating adulthood and parenthood themselves, you have to hold the popsicle bowl. And he's not doing that. And I think, it's a hard line, like you said. If you have somebody literally smacking you in the face with melted popsicle, like you just have to like disengage. Like you go to the people who are holding the popsicle bowl for them, which is, thank goodness, your spouse's parents do. I don't know necessarily if there's anything helpful other than to like, I personally would keep it very brief. Like, this is really hurtful. I don't know if it's pride. I don't know if it's what. You can come to the allergist with us if maybe I'm not explaining it correctly, and that would be helpful. Like, you're welcome to come for our next appointment and ask your own questions. But I have seen proof of the pudding is in the eating. I have seen the other set of grandparents be presented with the same situation you have, and the way that they have reacted is the reason why our child is going to have an amazing relationship with them growing up. It's the reason why they can spend the night over there. It's the reason why they can cook for them.
Yeah.
So like, this is the last time we're having this conversation. Let me know how you want to proceed. Good night.
Love that. That is such good advice. Really good.
Okay.
Question 2. We got to end there because it's so good.
Mic drop.
Yep.
Okay. There is an Instagram allergist who is extremely disrespectful to tip parents, and they warn others to stay out of it. Thoughts, feedback.
Yeah, I think I probably know who this person is too.
You're like, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think unfortunate is actually a good word. I think, if anybody knows about science and medical things and research, it should be you, right? You should know that it changes all the time. Like, that allergist should understand that, like, we used to say smoking was fine, right? Like, we used to not be worried about X, Y, and Z foods, and now all of a sudden we are. Even as, simple as something as, public discourse and lobbyist pressure on like industries, different food industries, like it all dictates the information that we're being fed, right? So like there's all these other factors out there that make recommendations and what the best practice or guidance in medicine is, and that changes all the time. And so all of that to say, like, to poo-poo something that you don't like when you actually don't know anything about it. And I would think that this allergist, so a big negative that people say about TIP is that they don't produce enough information to say, like, this is how we do things, this is why it works.
It's not
and
like public,
it's not like public
peer-reviewed
data. Yeah. Now they do have now a peer-reviewed study out there that you can read all about it. So that no longer is a talking point for these people who don't like it. However, I would argue then, like, okay, I get that. That's a fair point. You want to know more information. You wish it was like all this information was out there for you to look into and research yourself. But because it isn't a reason, in my view, to say that it doesn't work, when there are thousands of people who've gone through the program and it actually does work. I mean, it is a form, in a way, of OIT, right? You're building tolerance to allergens. OIT is FDA approved. Again, this is different than OIT in a lot of ways, but all of this just to say, like, if somebody uses their platform, like their educated platform, to talk down about something that is working for a lot of people just because they're not familiar with it, I would question their intent and their reasoning for being so strongly worded about it, right? Like there's something else going on there. There's something else evoking that emotion that you're seeing on their page. And we don't necessarily know what that is. I'm not saying anybody's like jealous or whatnot, but like, you know, tip is impossible in a standard allergist office. It's a giant operation. You know, you would have to have a very large, like, you know, Aspire Allergy, they are a very large allergy. The one that you go to here in Austin, he has a very large practice with a lot of people. Like it would have to be someone like that takes on a tip type program. But like your average allergist office would never be equipped to do a program like this. So like there is an element of competition in that they know that they could never do this. So it feels like a far off thing. It feels like, well, don't leave, don't go and do this other thing.
It's just so sad that the casualties are the patients and the people who already have a lot on their plate.
Yeah.
Like, why are you guys stuck in the crossfire? Like the people who have taken the plunge or who are thinking about it.
And I get that it's confusing. And I have said a million times, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, that like, I do not think TIP is a perfect program. I don't think it's for everyone. I think that there are some things that I question, like, why don't they do that? That's a good point. You know, like there are things that are yellow flags.
Right.
You know,
You're
what I
not
mean?
just like going in blind. Like I am a convert and a believer.
Right. No. Like I know that it's like concierge medicine, that we're paying a lot of money, and it better be, you know, good service, and it better be like a program that works for me after all of this time and effort. And I know that it's not FDA approved. Like I go in knowing these things, and these are risks that of course we have to take on, as a patient who's like advocating and trying to find the best thing for our kid. But I do have a problem with somebody who either beats around the bush to say it or says it outright, that something is either wrong or dangerous or bad when you actually don't really know anything about it. And I get that that might not be your fault. Like maybe you don't have the data or the information, but like then just stay quiet and tell people the information that you do know. So that's that.
That's that. Mic drop. She says in her sparkly, perfect dress.
I was saying today when I walked in, I'm like, I was channeling Danielle, and you're kind of channeling me, more like jeans and a shirt.
I totally am.
Did we play each other? Like
I
we
think
really
so.
like flip-flopped, a little Freaky Friday?
I was going to say, like, can I borrow this dress?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, great.
You would look adorable
You should wear it for
in
your
it.
party.
Oh yeah, I should. I'm having a wine party. I'll probably have already had the wine party by this.
I'll be out of town.
I know. I'm so sad about that.
I could fly back just for one night only.
I think you should.
Okay.
Everyone's like, okay, are we done with this episode now? Write us a review. Please let us know what you think of these episodes. If you have any ideas, send us your questions. And as always, thank you to our sponsors. And thank you so much for being here and for listening and supporting us.
We love you, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.